Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Zalikhaa binti Zainal Abidin and my metric number is 055769. And today I'm presenting about the background of the issue. I'm passing the floor to next person.
Hi everyone and Assalamualaikum. My name is Wan Zafifah binti Wan Zainudin and my metric number is 056799. So today I will present my part on the part of key finding, which is solution. And I will pass the floor to my friends. Thank you from me.
Thank you, Ms. Zafifah. My name is Nurul Najwa binti Amran and my metric number is 056181. And for today's discussion or presentation, I'll be presenting on the implementation for the conflict. I'm passing the floor to my other friend.
Thank you, Najwa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur'afifah binti Che Kodir and my matrix number is 056809. And in this presentation, I will be presenting on the evaluation as well as the conclusion on this issue. So I guess we shall now start our presentation on the issue that we are going to be discussing today. So I will share the poster first. If you guys can see this, it will be great if you can give me some reaction.
Yes.
Yes, you can see this. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be discussing on the feasible solution to the Rakhine state conflict in Myanmar. As we have mentioned before, we have 4 speakers for today's presentation. And without further ado, I would like to call the first presenter to start with the introduction. You may begin now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Afifah. Okay, for the background of this issue is recently Myanmar and Bangladesh announced an agreement for the repatriation of Rohingya refugees living in Bangladesh to return to Myanmar. So after Pope Francis visited both countries last week, international attention has again focused on chances of a breakthrough to this crisis, envisioning how a peaceful, negotiated solution might look is an urgent task. So while the details of the deal remain hazy, a few basic facts have emerged. The agreement builds on a memorandum signed between the governments of Myanmar and Bangladesh following a similar Rohingya refugee crisis in 1992 until 1993. So Myanmar has agreed to resettle refugees in temporary camps, protect their freedom of movement, and issue identity cards to those who can prove they previously resided in the country. But as Luke Han noted that the requirements to prove residency are unrealistically stringent, where people chased out of burning home and forced to flee violence, often without any supplies. So we'll find it all but impossible to provide a paperwork, which is the identity, to prove they or their kin lived in Myanmar. So besides, the agreement is only the first step on the long road to restoring stability in Rakhine state. So Myanmar will have to make genuine political concession to ensure peace. The military must drastically reduce the scope of its clearance operation on the police, provide security for the vulnerable Rakhine and Rohingya alike. So all of which should be monitored by a neutral international third party, which is the United Nations. So the military's decision to replace the head of Western Command is a small step in the right direction, but much more change is required to educate the police in the importance of preventing violence and protecting civilians' population in conflict zones. So allowing the United Nations Blue Helmets access to critical areas in Rakhine State can ensure further accountability. While that may be anathema to the Myanmar military. So Myanmar military or Tatmadaw, it may be the only palatable compromise to avoid further international condemnation. That's all from me.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Zalikhaa, for a very brief but very nice and detailed as well on the introduction part. I can see that we are going to look at the agreement between Myanmar and Bangladesh. And so I would like to call for the next presenter to present the key finding or the solution as we may. Please.
Okay, hi everyone. As already mentioned, I will present about the key finding, which is the solution. And in this part, first thing first, that the solution it fall under a few stages that we can take. First thing first, the international community responsibility, which is in this part we can see that Washington has expressed support for the civilian government led by the Aung San Suu Kyi and which is the leader. That basically the Washington state has expressed support for the civilian government led by the leader and decried the military complicity in crime against humanity. Shortly after returning from the trip to Myanmar, U.S. Secretary of State in 2017, which is State Rex Tillerson, announced that the U.S. would label the violence in Rakhine State as ethnic cleansing, a term that stopped short of genocide, which would necessitate international action. Nonetheless, Tillerson made it clear that the U.S. is considering targeted sanction against members of Tamat Madao proven to have a role in atrocities committed in Rakhine. And apart from that, the U.S. policymaker have repeatedly uh, argued that the leader have to follow, which is the leader in the Myanmar, have to follow through on her commitment to implement the recommendation of the International Commission on Rakhine State that was led by former UN Chief Kofi Annan. Was in 2017. This include repatriating and resettling all Rohingya pushed into neighboring Bangladesh and charting a clear path for them to obtain citizenship, which is in this situation we can say that the citizenship male held prior to the 1982 citizenship law and 1983 census, which effectively excluded the Rohingya. But in this situation, its rhetorical gesture, which is Washington has yet to detail a clear Myanmar policy. But I think that it was a good solution that they recommend. And second, we can see that in the country of the Beijing recently proposed a three-step solution to the Rakhine state crisis, which is according to the Chinese foreign minister in 2017. They recommend, which is Minister Wang Yi, they recommend that the first state that we should be ceasefire to restore order, and second, we should strengthening exchanges between Myanmar and Bangladesh to settle this issue, and the third is involving international help to develop Rakhine. Such as solution may sound simplistic, but a return to first principle is now in order. In this situation, we can say that clearly development alone does not hold all of the answer. I think that in my perspective, Myanmar societal problem will require decade of education and slowly changing shift in cultural attitude to resolve. And in this part also, the solution that near-term solution is required to ensure peace and basic human security for hundreds of thousands affected by the violence. And we can say that Bangladesh now hosts the bulk of the Rohingya population internationally, having in 600,000 refugees that fleeing atrocities in Rakhine State. And Myanmar will need to take more active approach toward this possible policy solution. And I think that that's all from me.
Thank you, Ms. Zafifah, for a brilliant solution given by you as explained regarding this matter. So I guess we will now proceed to the next presenter on the implementation of the solution. Please, we may now begin.
All right. I'm sorry, but am I audible?
Yes, very
All
clear.
right. Okay. As for the implementation, now what would a realistic solution look like? Okay, for starters, it will need to guarantee security to vulnerable populations in Rakhine, and not just Rohingya. It should be inclusive, where Rakhine Buddhists also need to be assured that they will be safe from attacks by Muslim groups, though there are not many cases on this, but the issue is an extremely potent concern inside Myanmar. And this can be done by allowing some independent monitors in Rakhine who can also serve as a check on the military's heretofore brutal counterinsurgency tactics. Second, a compromise deal will need to eventually allow the reintegration of these two estranged communities, as separation will only make future conflict to be more likely serious. And finally, a solution will need to guarantee the Myanmar government that the international humanitarians or foreign agents will not intervene in domestic affairs, as we do understand that it is a perennial fear of Myanmar's military. Now, given Myanmar's paranoia about foreign meddling, the two sides should continue talks directly with the goal of a compromise agreement on how to manage almost 1 million people displaced by violence since 2012. Bangladesh should also engage countries such as Pakistan, Malaysia, and Saudi Arabia, which have already become home to many diaspora Rohingya. And together, they can seek out resettlement alternatives for Rohingya that are unwilling to return to Myanmar due to fears surrounding by their safety or for other reasons, or those who have barred by the Myanmar's government stringent repatriation process. The international community, including China, can also help to damp down ethnic tension by urging Myanmar and Bangladesh to continue talks with the goal of an end to bloodshed and the peaceful return of those displaced by violence. And apart from that, global partners can also lend more humanitarian assistance to refugees in Bangladesh and support reconstruction in Rakhine State. But the first and the most important thing to settling this issue is by restoring stability in Rakhine State, which will require stakeholders to think about the big picture and engage in dialogue with related parties. I guess that's all from me. I'm passing the floor back to Ms. Afifah.
All right. Thank you so much for the explanation from you as well as from all the speakers. So now I guess I will conclude. First of all, the problem here is the scope of or the context that we're talking about is the agreement between Myanmar and Bangladesh, because a lot of Rohingya population have migrated or moved to Bangladesh because of the violence, atrocities inflicted upon them from the Myanmar government. So agreement have been made by both government for Myanmar to take back their people, uh, offer a safe place for them to stay back into their home country. So here, I would say that rather than this situation happened because ethnic conflict. So rather than the government itself intervene to stop the conflict, it would be possible if they use or opted to use the UN Blue Helmet access in order to stop any conflict that happened between the ethnics in conflict. And finally, as has been mentioned before, Myanmar and Bangladesh should continue direct negotiation to settle on how to handle 1 million displaced due to the conflict happened since 2012. And that is all from all of us for this discussion, and I shall now end the discussion. Thank you so much for joining this discussion.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.